Grossi Posse Packer Nation, welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Can I be the greatest QB of the Green Bay Packers? No, I can't. Grossi. And today we're going to do a little bit of a different type of video here on the channel. Every now and then I decide to do a little bit of a deep dive into a particular topic. I've done this on, for example, on like Mitch Trubisky a couple of years ago. I've done it on the Packers a few times, talking about some of their biggest draft busts. But today I wanted to kind of do a different type of video that is going to consist of some game footage, which usually I stray away from just because it can get copyrighted, but I'm not going to be monetizing this at all, so there shouldn't be any ads in front of this. So this is going to be done completely for free because this is a video that I've been wanting to make for quite some time.
And I'm going to give it to him.
And that was to try and answer the question, and who is the greatest Green Bay Packers QB of all time? And now there's going to already be some names that are going to pop up into your mind, like, of course, Aaron Rodgers, Bart Starr, Brett Favre, Matt Flynn, and all of those are 100% correct. But I wanted to go through and actually make an argument as to who I thought was the best Packers QB. And I wanted to do this by, of course, looking at stats. I wanted to look at their accolades, how they performed in games like the playoffs, and with all that, giving you a definitive argument as to who I think is the greatest Packers QB of all time. Now, I am going to focus on the three that I said. Sorry, Matt Flynn, even though you hold the record for most TDs in Packers franchise history with 6 against the Lions because of that 1 week, and then you went to the Seahawks. I'll always love you, Matt Flynn, for the win. He's not going to be on the list. And yes, you have other great guys like Lynn Dickey, you have the Magic Man, of course, but this is going to basically be a video about Bart Starr, Brett Favre, and Aaron Rodgers. And it's not to say this is my favorite QB, it's just making an argument for who I think is the best, considering the Packers are very fortunate to have several Hall of Fame and future Hall of Fame QBs. So, with that being said, let's start with the most underrated guy on this list, and that is one Bart Starr. Now, we're going to ignore Bart Starr's coaching because we just don't need to talk about that. Instead, we're going to kind of go through Bart Starr's career, and honestly, this is probably and arguably one of the most underrated QBs in not only Packers history, but NFL history as well. When you start talking about greatest QBs of all time, I find that Bart Starr is usually not on a lot of people's lists, whether it's top 10, top 15, top 20, and I think there's a very serious argument for top 15, potentially even top 10 because of what Bart Starr was able to do. And some of you might look at the stats and be like, well, his stats aren't really that impressive. But if you're to understand the context of the time period in which Bart Starr is in and what he was able to do with the minimal attempts that he had and the team that he was on, it's pretty damn impressive. So Bart Starr played from 1956 to 1971. He was the 200th pick in the 1956 NFL draft, played 16 seasons, all with the Green Bay Packers, was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1977. And here's why. In 196 games, he spent 157 of those as a starter, because right off the bat, Bart Starr did not earn the starting job as the Packers QB. In fact, it took him almost 5 years to win the starting job with the Green Bay Packers, and he didn't get his first victory as a starter until late November in 1959. But just to give you an idea of the stats that Bart Starr was able to accrue during the regular season, he was 94, 57, and 6 as a starter. He completed 57.4% of his passes for 24,718 yards, 152 touchdowns, and 138 interceptions. Now, again, you look at the TD and interception ratio and you're like, whoa, okay, like that's not that great. But I think it's important to also recognize that he did all of this on 3,149 attempts, which is a heck of a lot lower than a lot of these other QBs, especially in today's game, because while the Packers, yes, they are known for the sweep back then, especially under Lombardi and running the ball a whole lot, Bart Starr really didn't get a ton of room to really showcase how good of a QB that he was on a consistent basis. But boy, oh boy, when he wanted to sling that ball, he did so, and did so very, very well. He had 5 years with a QB rating over 90, including in 1966, where he had a 105 QB rating. He's a 4-time Pro Bowler, 1-time All-Pro, 2-time Super Bowl champ, 5-time NFL champ, 2-time Super Bowl MVP, and he also was in the Hall of Fame All-1960s team. Now, as I mentioned before in talking about his attempts, only 3,149 attempts during the regular season. The most attempts he ever had per season was 295. So to give you some context and what that would look like, for example, like in today's game, Tom Brady in his illustrious career has never thrown fewer than 413 passes in a season, and that was all the way back in 2001. And just to give you an example of last year, Tom Brady threw the ball over 700 times. So for Bart Starr, that averaged around 20 attempts per start, meaning the guy wasn't throwing the ball all the time. Also, to give you another example, Aaron Rodgers, who spent 3 years on the bench, has 7,118 attempts in his career, which is just about as long as Bart Starr's. So Aaron Rodgers is throwing it nearly twice as frequent as Bart Starr did in that Lombardi offense. Now, on those attempts, Bart Starr averaged about 7.8 yards per attempt, which is pretty damn impressive. Aaron Rodgers has averaged the same. Tom Brady, 7.5. Joe Montana, 7.5. Brett Favre, 7.1. And even guys like Johnny Unitas, 7.8, and that's on 5,186 attempts, which is significantly higher than what Bart Starr attempted. In all of the 1960s, the NFL only had 6 100-plus passer ratings, and Bart Starr owned 2 of them. But this is only really just focusing on the regular season. One of the reasons why Bart Starr is lauded as one of the greatest QBs of all time is for his postseason, because arguably Bart Starr is the greatest postseason QB of all time. His record, 9-1. And yes, wins are not QB stats, but oh boy, when the lights were bright in the postseason, Bart Starr came to play. Bart Starr lost his first playoff game against the Philadelphia Eagles and then did not lose another postseason game as a player. So during those 10 games, he completed 61% of his passes, over 1,700 yards, 15 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, had a 104.8 QB rating overall. In 1966, he went 2-0, was 35 for 51 for over 554 yards, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. That is the postseason where the Packers became the first ever Super Bowl champions. Then in 1967, the Packers would repeat and win the second overall Super Bowl. They went 3-0 in the postseason, 44 for 71 for Starr, 615 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. The guy was an absolute field general. He ran Vince Lombardi's offense to a T. However, he was also not afraid to voice his opinion to Vince Lombardi. There's stories that you can go and find of which Bart Starr was getting yelled at in front of the team publicly.
And I said, I can't do that if you're going to chew me out in front of them. I said, now, if I've got a chewing out coming, fine, but do it in the privacy of this office where you apologize to me when you know you're wrong. I said, otherwise, don't ever expect me to go out there and be your leader.
And Vince Lombardi never talked to him like that ever again in public. For example, one of the greatest plays in Packers history and arguably in NFL history, of course, was from the Ice Bowl against the Cowboys. That was Bart Starr's idea to do the QB sneak, in which they kept handing it to the fullback for 2 plays in a row, and he kept tripping because the field was so icy and slippery. And so Bart Starr said, hey, ran over to the sideline, ran over to Vince and said, let's run this in.
And this is exactly what Coach Lombardi said, which was so typical of this man. He said, well, then run it, and let's get the hell out of here.
Now, one of the reasons why people bring Bart Starr down a peg is because they look at all of the Hall of Fame talent that was around him. And that's not to take away anything from anybody, because he did have some studs. For example, 1959 to 1964, the Packers had a top 3 run game.
I wasn't asked to carry the team that much with a passing game. When you have Horning and Taylor in the backfield behind you, they were fabulous.
However, 1966, for example, when they won their first Super Bowl and Bart Starr had his best statistical season, they were 11th out of 24th when it came to the run game. So Bart Starr, there is absolutely nothing to be taken away from. I think now in 2022, we look back and just look at his stats and go, oh, okay, they were all right. But look at his postseason record and look what he was able to do on one of the greatest teams ever to be formed in NFL history. And Bart Starr still stands out as being a phenomenal quarterback. He is definitely one of the greatest Packers franchise QBs and arguably one of the best QBs in NFL history.
Anybody can play when there's really nothing at stake. But I really think the measure of the player is how well he plays under pressure when you have to win.
But after that, it takes a little while for the Green Bay Packers to get their next Hall of Fame QB, one that would arrive in the 1990s, and of course, that is one
Brett Favre.
Brett Favre, of course, drafted by the Atlanta Falcons, wound up getting traded to Green Bay, and is well known as being the resurgence of the Green Bay Packers. And Brett Favre, for a lot of fans, is known as either one, their childhood QB, or the guy who made football fun, but at the very least is the guy who made the Green Bay Packers relevant again. Because as soon as Brett Favre hit the field, he was a difference maker. For example, in the 1992 season where Brett Favre would play, he helped the Packers go 9-7, which was the Packers' second winning season in 10 years. Yeah, the 80s Packers were not good.
Not great, Bob.
And Brett Favre would go on, play every single game from September 20th of 1992 to January 20th of 2008. Now, of course, looking at Brett Favre today, there's lots of things that you could say about the man, off the field stuff, which is not great.
I am not a role model. I'm a jeans model.
This is going to focus mostly on his on-the-field accomplishments. And yes, unfortunately, there was addiction that was attached to that and opioid abuse. However, you still cannot take the grit away from Brett Favre and being able to have this long-standing record of playing in every single game. Taking a look at what else Brett Favre was able to accomplish, he had a winning season in every single year as a starter for the Packers except for 3 seasons. He spent 16 years with Green Bay, just like he did with Bart Starr. We're not going to talk about the purple incarnation of Satan where he left after that.
Evil! Evil!
Played in 302 games, 298 as a starter. His record, 186 and 112. 6,300 passes completed out of 10,169 attempts, basically triple what Bart Starr had a 62% completion rating, 508 touchdowns, 336 interceptions for an 85.8 QB rating. Now, Brett Favre, just speaking as a fan and someone who grew up with Brett Favre, known as the gunslinger. You were going to live and die by Brett Favre. The guy's accolades, they stretch a mile long. He's a Hall of Famer, an 11-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, 1-time Super Bowl champ, 3-time MVP, part of the Hall of Fame All-90s team, and those MVPs he did back-to-back-to-back. Aaron Rodgers could do that if he wins the MVP award this season. He's also part of the 1996 Green Bay Packers team, which won Super Bowl 31 against the New England Patriots, arguably one of the best teams ever to take the field. They were #1 on offense, #1 on defense, and #1 on special teams. In 1996, they were undefeated at home. This was the first time this has happened since 1962. In addition, he broke just about every record at the time, passing Dan Marino as the passing leader in attempts, completion, yards, and touchdowns. He also happens to be #1 in interceptions. And just to give you an idea, he threw 336 interceptions. The next guy down on the list was 277.
You think God never farted?
He played 22 games in the postseason, had a 12-10 record, 438 completions out of 721 attempts, 60.7 completion rating, 5,311 yards, 39 touchdowns, 28 interceptions, and 85.2 as a QB rating. So Brett Favre most definitely brought success back to the Green Bay Packers. Now, they won a Super Bowl, were very much helped by an amazing defense and an amazing special teams. However, Brett Favre kept the Green Bay Packers relevant for a very long time, even when they didn't have great players on the field. So while yes, he did throw a lot of interceptions, Brett Favre basically set every single record in a pass-happy league while he was a starter. While we wish that his career ended a little bit better and still on the Green Bay Packers, where he could have just went off into the sunset, that's not to take anything away from Brett Favre, and he is still one of the greatest Packers QBs of all time and one of the best NFL QBs of all time.
What makes me most proud is how I played the game. I couldn't believe that they paid us and that I was racking up statistics like I was. I was just having fun.
And finally, we have the current MVP, and that is one Aaron Rodgers. Giving the list of accolades similar to Brett Favre, except for interceptions. 10-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro, 4-time MVP, 1-time Super Bowl champ, was also the Super Bowl 45 MVP. He was also in the Hall of Fame All-2010s team. Aaron Rodgers is kind of the best combination of Brett Favre and Bart Starr, except for, unfortunately, the postseason record, but it's okay. We're going to talk about that. Aaron Rodgers, as we know, spent 3 years on the bench, is heading into his 18th season in the NFL. He only played in 7 games during those first 3 years after being drafted in 2005, has played 213 games, 206 as a starter. His record, 139, 66, and 1. 4,651 completions out of 7,118 attempts, 65.3% completion rating, 55,360 yards, 449 touchdowns, and only 93 interceptions. He has insane accuracy. His QB rating for his career is 104.5. Hell, in 2011, he had a QB rating of 122.5. Talking about the history that Aaron Rodgers has made, he ranks #3 in NFL history in career passer rating and #1 in TD interception ratio with 4.83. The next guy on that list is Patrick Mahomes at 4.08. Aaron Rodgers and Peyton Manning are the only 2 players since the inception of the award to win more than 3 MVPs. He holds the top 2 single-season passer ratings in NFL history from 2011, which is 122.5, and 2020, which is 121.5. He also holds the only 3 seasons in NFL history with 40-plus touchdown passes and 7 or fewer interceptions. And just one more little accolade before we get to the playoffs, he has led the league in interception percentage 6 times, and he's currently done it for 4 straight seasons. Nobody has done it more than 2 seasons back to back.
I sometimes laugh when people talk about
down years for me, because a lot of times down years for me are career years for most quarterbacks.
So yes, Aaron Rodgers is incredibly gifted as a QB. He makes incredibly smart decisions. He is very, very cautious with the football, but he obviously can let it rip as well. And now let's get to the playoffs. He's 11-10 as a starter, so similar to Brett Favre. 501 completions out of the 774 attempts. He has a 64.7 completion percentage, 5,894 yards, 45 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 100.1 QB rating. Now, of course, that postseason's a little disappointing, similar to how it is with Brett Favre. And while Aaron Rodgers definitely does deserve some criticism for some of his postseason performances, you also need to look at the teams that were around him. You look at like the 4 NFC Championship games in which, for example, against the Seahawks, everything went wrong, and that really wasn't on Aaron Rodgers at all. I mean, you could look at special teams, you could look at defense. Hell, when they get blown out by the Falcons in the run-the-table season, nothing really you could do there. And of course, you do have the Buccaneers game in which the defense struggled in the first half, but they came back and Aaron Rodgers and the offense was just unable to finish. Also, it hurt that you didn't have David Bakhtiari these past 2 seasons. And then the 49ers, after the first drive, everything kind of fell apart for the Packers on offense. But you also have to look at the special teams. So to basically take a look at Aaron Rodgers, who's still playing at an incredibly high level, we just mentioned he's gone back-to-back MVP. We'll see how he does this year without a guy like Davante Adams, because Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre and Bart Starr all had pretty darn good wide receivers. But to try and summarize which of these QBs is the best in Packers history, if I had to do a ranking, I would do number 3 is going to be Brett Favre. He definitely did bring the Green Bay Packers back to relevance in the 90s and into the 2000s. He set just about every single passing record. At the same time, he also had the benefit of a phenomenal defense a couple of years, special teams, great receivers, and also, he threw a whole lot of interceptions, more than Bart Starr and Aaron Rodgers combined. So that deducts a few points. Number 2, it would have to be Bart Starr. While yes, you could look at just his stats in the regular season and say like, okay, he had a couple of really good years, taking the context of the 60s when he primarily played, what he's able to do on the field, and more importantly, what he was able to do in the postseason is absolutely incredible. And then number 1, I think you have to go with Aaron Rodgers. And this is not just recency bias, but he basically is the gunslinger of Brett Favre without the mistakes of the interceptions. You look at the Mike McCarthy era, and while Mike McCarthy is, I think, a good coach, you look at how many times the Packers had no run game. They didn't have any defense whatsoever to speak of, and Aaron Rodgers made them playoff contenders time and time and time again. Aaron Rodgers is a difference maker. Now, that's not to say he can't be criticized, because there are times where he definitely hasn't performed, but he is the MVP the past 2 seasons for a reason, and I think he will go down as one of the best QBs, not only in Packers history, but in NFL history as a whole.
I grew up watching and idolizing Montana and Young and Favre, and appreciating the greatness of a John Elway and a Dan Marino. But I do appreciate it, and I understand what an honor that is to be mentioned with Tom or anybody they put me in the conversation with.
But let me know what you think down in the comments below. Who do you think is the greatest Green Bay Packers QB of all time, besides Matt Flynn? Let me know. You know, find me at TomGrossiComedy.com or TomGrossiComedy, all social media you see down below. Check out podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play Music, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrossiComedy and the YouTube members. But I appreciate you folks. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. A little bit different. I wanted to do a little bit of a deep dive. Let me know how you liked it. I appreciate all the support. Feel free to subscribe and all that great stuff. But folks, thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.